the same. We begin, and we end. What we don't know about where we are before, and where we go after. Far surpasses what we do know. We can be so sure in our faith, in science, and yet the fear of our fate continues to drift near the surface. The only certainty that any of us can count on in its entirety is death.
My name's Serena Dc, and I'm an investigative filmmaker that's always been so fascinated about what happens to you when you die. I've always believed that we have a body and a soul that are separate from each other, and that our soul can live on long after our bodies have died. These beliefs have been purely based on books that I've read, stories I've been told, but nothing I've ever experienced for myself. So we decided to embark on a journey, immersing ourselves into the world of those who say they've been able to tap into this afterlife in an attempt to answer the question, what really happens to us beyond the grave? To start this journey, it felt natural to sit down with someone who deals with death on a daily basis. So I decided to meet up with Mary Taliano, a woman that has a very interesting job. She's a death doula and an end-of-life coach.
The work that I do is I hold sacred and nurturing space for people who are transitioning. And my mission is to rebrand death. And through that mission, I've created an end-of-life school that certifies other end-of-life coaches to hold this sacred space. There is so much happening right now within the collective that is really asking us to honor this process and to witness our brothers and sisters in this beautiful and nurturing way. For me in particular, I come in and I work with sound, meditation, breath work, end-of-life coaching, legacy projects, so helping them create a legacy project to honor their life. And that really helps the family in the grieving process too. And then I help them design how they want to die, which is called a vigil. So oftentimes people who are at the end of life, they're just kind of at the mercy of whatever the aesthetics is of the room.
Right.
But I serve, and the people who are end-of-life doulas serve as a reminder that, do you want certain scents? Do you want the lighting to be a certain way? The fear of death is rooted in a lot of human suffering, and we don't have to suffer like we thought we had to. So I really want to liberate people through their ways that they can interact and lean into death as opposed to not talk about it and retreat. So this was given to me, by a client who was transitioning. And it's just been really special to me. He was one of my biggest teachers, and he still works with me now when I'm serving other people and other clients.
So now that he's passed over.
He shows up for me in a very beautiful way, constantly. And it was very clear when I was serving him before our first session that this was going to be bigger than I had ever imagined. And it still keeps unfolding. He still keeps showing up for me and helping me and just being like my ally on the other side.
I've had the privilege of spending some time with a couple of people just before they passed away. And honestly, for me, it was a very, very depressing experience. But for Mary, it seems as though she derives so much joy from helping people transition from one state to another.
He initially called me to be his end-of-life doula during a time where he was still really fighting for his life. So the conversation was, I don't want you to be my death doula, but I feel I need you in my life.
Right.
So, and I get a lot of clients that way, that know there's a part of them that's not ready to let go, but are
realistic, I guess.
Fundamentally preparing for the support.
Yep.
So our sessions look like sound healing, breath work, Reiki healing, and sometimes.
And what was wrong with him?
He died of cancer.
Okay.
Yeah, pancreatic.
Right.
And so.
So quite aggressive.
Very aggressive,
rapid,
very quickly.
Yeah.
But our sessions at the beginning just looked like me walking him through his test medicine. So I will empower my clients to be in that state of receiving chemo and receiving it from a place of, this is my medicine. I'm choosing you. I'm going to allow you into my body because I believe we can work together to make me whole again. He had a really beautiful setup. The home that he was in was all windows that overlooked the ocean.
Wow.
He had a beautiful like medicine blanket over him at the whole time, and had this crystal that laid underneath him. We opened up all the doors and had the beautiful breeze. And this was in April 2 years ago. And so it was spring and new life. And he just slowly passed away in that state. There was like 3 or 4 days where he was in the active dying state, and you can just, different markers that are happening on people where their body, it's getting closer. Yeah, he died there outside in the middle of the afternoon, surrounded by his wife and his children. And she took photos of his whole process, and you could see his spirit come out and like wrap around his children.
What do you mean you could see it?
I have to just show you the pictures.
Okay.
I'll just show you the picture,
Yeah,
because
okay.
you'll see what I mean.
Yeah.
So this is how he passed.
Wow.
That's him holding his, like, look how
This vibrating.
It's like a very.
That's incredible.
Yeah. If there is proof that the spirit is energy, I feel like this is that.
Oh, wow. Has there been a common denominator there? Has there been one thing that stood out to you that could be a message for others that are supporting someone that's going to pass?
Yeah, it's always the same thing. It's just, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Give it a chance and see where your fear comes from, because we're not born with it. Our fear of death is often taught to us through religion or social hierarchy, or just the things that we maybe even witness in the media, on TV shows. Our pets dying and not knowing how to walk us through that. So just kind of investigate where your fear is, and then know that that's the thing that's inhibiting you from fully living.
Right.
Death wants to teach us something, and it only gives back when we participate with it in this healthy conversation. Rebranding death is just really born from the fact that we're not dying well. And there's a huge fear in our collective that eats away at so much of our bandwidth. And so rebranding death is giving people a new way to live. It's giving them a new way to die as well.
Mary has such a unique perspective. She's been able to witness hundreds of people at the point of passing away. And whilst these people have passed away, she's been able to see their spirits not only leaving the body with her eyes, but she's also been able to capture them on camera. So if our spirit really does leave our body, Where does the spirit go? Are we heading up to heaven? Are we sticking around to haunt our loved ones? Or are we going somewhere else? The first person that comes to mind is Dr. Eben Alexander, the author of one of my favourite books, Proof of Heaven, where he describes his near-death experience that occurred whilst he was in a coma for 7 days. He agreed to meet with me over Zoom to pick his brain not only about his near-death experience, but about all things related to what happens on the other side.
Eben Alexander, a Harvard-trained neurosurgeon who was a skeptic when it came to religion, survived a near-death experience.
You say death is temporary.
I would say it's like breathing. You breathe in here, breathe out in death, and then breathe in again for another incarnation.
This soft summer breeze that blew through the scene, and given my complete amnesia for all of my human knowledge and kind of preconceptions, that soft summer breeze is something I called in my early writings the divine wind, or the breath of God. That was my first knowing of the power, majesty, awe, and beautiful, simplistic, personal nature of that loving God force that so many have encountered over thousands of years on similar journeys. That's been the basis of all of our religious systems, is coming from this type of journey, showing us that beautiful world. But really the NDE brings it back in such a pure and elegant fashion.
I've done many interviews with people who had the experience and they didn't want to leave. You didn't remember your family or didn't remember all the world, the dense world here on Earth. So there wasn't anything to remember to want to come back to, but you still came.
Until Bond.
Until Bond.
The sixth face. Deep in the experience, I was clearly, completely removed up out of space and time. Given the amnesia, it looks like I was not going to have an Eben Alexander life review, which would have made no sense given that amnesia, and then have a full return of memories afterward to show me how memories are not even stored in the brain.
This proves that our soul, our consciousness, our spirit doesn't depend on the existence of the brain and body at all.
I wanted to learn more about near-death experiences and see if there are any similarities between the stories people were telling. So I reached out to Peter Anthony. He's a numerologist and the author of the book Keymaster.
I had been misdiagnosed with a stomach ulcer, and so I was taking a medication called Tagamet. And the last several months, I was just losing a lot of weight and bleeding. I would just pop more and more Tagamet.
It's the ulcer, okay?
Yeah,
just
pop more in, and I'm busy with my career, avoiding the doctor, avoiding all appointments. I take responsibility for that. And when I pass out in the men's room at my birthday party, I was found, and they knew that something was wrong. And I said, no, I'm okay. I drove myself home. Fast forward, I open up my door, I passed out again, and my neighbor found me. And I was there in between an open door and in my corridor going into my living room. And he was the one that called the ambulance and rushed me to the emergency room. This was in the height of the AIDS epidemic. And I had lost so much weight. I was putting makeup on my face because I had these little brown spots on my face, on my neck.
You're bleeding, you're passing
bleeding
out. They're
and
just
coughing.
thinking.
And so automatically they just social profiled me, thinking that I was in the last final moments of the AIDS virus. And so this young intern suited up and basically put me into a corner by an exit door and left me there. So I think I had been bleeding maybe an hour and a half before a nurse found me. And I begged her, please take me to the ER, take me down to the ER. And she took me into the ER, and I remember I went into cubicle number 11. And I could hear this nurse arguing with the anesthesiologist and arguing with the doctors. And I remember I could hear them saying, what have you done, Sullivan? He's in the final stages of the AIDS virus, and you've exposed us all to this virus. I'm on a gurney, bleeding. And there is this African-American woman next to me, also on a gurney. And I remember looking her in the eyes, and she had these piercing blue eyes, and she reached out to me and she said, "Don't be afraid to go into the light." And it freaked me out, because what did she mean by that? I go into the OR, and everything just kind of went into this very slow motion. Doctors, the anesthesiologist, I had lost so much blood that they couldn't put the IVs in my arm, so they kept collapsing. I could feel death calling on me, and I remember it was just 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Death came for me.
Ellen Wheaton always had a deep passion for horses, and it was this passion that led to her most life-changing experience. In fact, she attributes her entire career as a musical therapist and spiritual coach to her NDE experience.
You know, my mom said I was interested from the time I was little. Unicorns and horses, I was obsessed.
That was your thing.
And I started riding when I was, I guess maybe 8 or 9.
Right.
Yeah.
And the incident actually happened when you were 12, is that right?
Yeah. I was at my first Western lesson, and it was the first time I hadn't worn a helmet. So, of course, that was meant to happen.
Right.
The cinch slipped. You know, the horse expanded its belly then they were putting it on. The cinch slipped. I fell underneath the horse and held on for dear life. But apparently,
What, and then the horse was galloping along?
Yeah, it was scared. And so then I fell off the horse, it reared up, kicked me in the head, and actually ran through a fence like this. And from what I understand, you know, it was hurt, but yeah.
And when you keep saying, from what I understand, does that mean that you don't have any memory of it?
I don't remember anything from before the accident. It's like my life started in that moment, on that day, and it was meant to. And I've been told that the horse and I had a contract, right? That it was meant to be in my life at that time for this reason. And so, yeah, I don't have any memories. I couldn't remember people or things or birthdays or celebrations or first days of school. But the near-death experience is more clear to me than any memory that I have in my life. The first thing I remember, I was actually on what looked like a raft on a pink cloud, and I felt very safe and protected, and I was just floating along with 2 guides in front of me, and I knew that I was safe. One was familiar to me, it was Jesus, and then on the left side of me was another being. He was young and bald and had brown robes that went down to his feet, but I didn't discover who he was until I was in grad school, and he was another ascended master, and he was Buddha. So I felt complete, I felt whole, I felt protected, and that was just the beginning, the preview of what was coming. When I was on the raft, they didn't communicate with me then. I just knew I was protected and safe. But at some point, I was taken to a place of light, and that was the real experience. That's when I really felt connection and source energy, and I melted into the light. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. It was warm and heavy, and it just seeped into me, like all the cells of me became light, and then there was no body, there was no human concept, it was just love. It was complete, absolute love. It was,
The first thing I felt was a snap. Something was attached to my solar plexus, and I could feel Peter Anthony, if you will, soul, spirit, being sucked over to this, or vacuumed into this hole. And here I am looking at me, Peter Anthony, down in physical form. And yet at the same time, I can't see myself, but I can feel myself. And as I'm feeling myself hover above my physical body, I'm looking down and I'm watching the doctors go into medical protocol. And everything goes into this very surreal pause moment. And I could see them almost like in this very slow motion movement going in to get the shock paddles and putting them down on my chest. Meanwhile, I'm up here and I could see this rotating tunnel spinning here, and I'm being drawn towards this tunnel. And I wasn't resisting and I wasn't in shock, but there was this sense of peace that began to take over the spirit, the essence of Peter Anthony, as I'm being sucked into this tunnel.
Were you afraid?
No, I was not afraid at all. In fact, I think probably at peace. I felt at peace. I'm looking down at Peter Anthony in physical form, and I could feel the pain and the angst of that whole going to the hospital. And all of a sudden, as I'm being, taken into this tunnel, I just felt a sense of peace, a sense of calm. And I felt a sense of just allowing the spirit to go into this tunnel.
The core realm, a dazzling darkness where all paradoxes are resolved, all dualities come into oneness, where one becomes one with that God force of pure love. And I came to realize that our very conscious awareness is never separate from that God force. One of the most beautiful gifts of this journey, which has also been gifted to many other near-death experiencers who have felt that sense of pure oneness of love. And they come back to this world knowing that the only appropriate response is to love all of our fellow beings.
I was given the choice. Do you want to live your life, or would you like to stay here? And I wanted to stay there, to be honest. I was like, oh, I love this, is so amazing. This is where I'm whole, this is where I'm complete. But then I saw the trajectory of my family's experience. Like, I was shown what their life would be like. There was no right or wrong. I could make any choice and it would be absolutely perfect in that moment. But I could see that my family wouldn't actualize their purpose on this life as well as they would have if I came back. And that was the choice that I made. I came back for them. But the moment that I chose to live, that's when everything happened. All at once, I was told I would heal people with music. That was my gift. I felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude. Like my heart just opened. And I didn't have that feeling before because I was in the place of heaven. There were no human feelings. It was like I made the choice and then they gave me this gratitude. And I almost like fell to my knees and said, like, I'll give thanks every day that I get to live and that I get to do this and I have a purpose. And then I received all the other messages that we all have a purpose. Everyone is in your life for a reason. We come together in time for a reason every single time. So much care and love went to the creation of us and the planet, and everything that went into this earth was so thought out and so loved and caring, and we are meant to raise the frequency. We're meant to step into a new golden age, and that is upon us right now, and we get to be here for it.
I'm looking out into the galaxy, and it's almost like I really, to this day, can't even describe what I saw, what I, to this day, even see in my visual memory. But it was like fragments of gold, like a sun, just splitting. And the voice said to me, after seeing all of this on the planet, the voice said to me, do you want to go back? I was given a choice. Most people do not want to go back. But I saw that I wasn't stuttering. I saw myself traveling around the planet. I saw myself signing books. I saw myself, saving animals. A big part of my new life. An advocator of really wanting to make a difference on this planet. As I'm coming back, and I say to Mother Earth, because I'm in this galaxy of stars, and I see the fragments of my soul, my spirit. And to the left, to the right, to the front, to the back, all these fragment souls coming back. Those who've been cleansed, those who made choices to come in as new souls, those who are old souls who have come back to make a difference on the planet. We were all coming back to Mother Earth as fragment energy. And as we were coming down to Mother Earth, this moment of this, I guess it's this surreal, ethereal moment, and you're going back to planet Earth. And I remember the moment I hit my body, because all that peace and all those colors and all those voices faded. And when it hit my body, I remember I could feel the pain of the surgery. I could taste the medicine. I could taste the drugs in my system. It was a 180-degree turnaround from this to that, from spirit to physical. Changed.
Well, before my own NDE, I had heard stories from patients and families reporting on patients about these extraordinary journeys. And I just thought, as most materialist neuroscientists believe, well, that's a hallucination. The dying brain plays all kinds of tricks. How interesting. And I'd never paid much attention to them, had never read the literature. I'd been open to the belief, though, because my father was very influential in my life, my adoptive father, and he was he was a scientist, he was a head of a neurosurgical training program, and yet he had a very strong belief in God. He knew the reality of God, he knew the power of prayer in his work as a neurosurgeon and healing. But like most of us who grew up in the 60s and 70s, I always knew that science is the pathway to truth. And the only problem was I short-circuited, like so many of us, thinking that the low-hanging fruit of materialist science, of the conventional version of kind of Newtonian deterministic science, was correct. It is not. This quantum-informed version of reality that's open widely to free will is absolutely one that embraces this 180-degree flip from my formal materialist position. And I would call that materialist science is really the modern pseudoscience, because this science of consciousness that we're studying now, writ large, going very deep, taking these experiences seriously, is opening up to a far grander universe that we live in. And that's where the science of consciousness is headed now into very interesting territory.
With all of these NDE stories, their bodies died, but their spirits left. This suggests that the body is separate from our consciousness. So I reached out to my friend Adam M. Curry. Adam is currently studying the origins of consciousness. So if anyone can help us to understand the separation between body and consciousness, it's him.
My name is Adam Curry. I'm an inventor and technology entrepreneur. I spent the last decade and a half involved in the consciousness research community. Up until very recently, science or scientists didn't necessarily believe that consciousness was real, which is a crazy thing to think about because consciousness is literally the most central experience we can have. And what started to happen is that that perspective on consciousness is falling apart. It doesn't make any sense logically. It certainly doesn't make sense experimentally. And around the perimeter of the scientific inquiry in consciousness, there are anomalies. There are things that make you scratch your head and go, Psychokinesis is one, telekinesis and ESP research is another, the whole area of parapsychology.
Right.
There's anomalies in interpretations of quantum theories, okay, which is a smaller subset. But then there's also the near-death experience stuff. The fact that you have so many people having the same experience again and again, that seems like they're traveling, their consciousness is independent of their body somehow.
Well, in particular, that at the beginning of their experiences, they rise up above their body and are able to look down on it.
Yeah, yeah. And notice details that they shouldn't know under anesthesia or with,
or being unconscious.
Being unconscious, yeah. Truly fascinating stuff. And so, you start to, at the beginning of every scientific revolution or paradigm shift, I guess, in terms of how we understand ourselves in the world, the weight of the anomalies, the things that don't fit the models, starts to accumulate, okay, until it reaches a tipping point where somebody can thread all those needles and come up with some sort of new explanation, which requires really a new metaphysical assumption about reality in each case, right? And so I believe that we're at that point right now. We're trading this metaphysical assumption about reality called materialism, which says that the only thing that's real is just matter and the properties of matter. We're trading that for something that is far more interesting, in my opinion, which takes account of consciousness as being something that's not strictly an illusion, but that our awareness, or awareness in general, might be suffused throughout all of creation, really, suffused throughout the cosmos. There's still a lot of work to do to explain things like near-death experiences and so forth, but at least in that perspective, we'd have a framework to be able to kind of explain some of these anomalies and say, okay, we can't just discard them or pretend they don't exist. They do exist. It suggests this about the world. And now you set the stage for the next 100 years of scientific breakthrough, right? That's where we are.
Everything I've learnt on this journey so far suggests that the body and consciousness are two completely separate things. But there's a company that completely challenges that idea. Alcor claims that they are able to extend life by cryogenically vitrifying a body at the point of death, suspending them in time until science and technology have got to a point where they're able to either heal the patient's body or replace it.
Hello, welcome to Alcor.
Hey, Dr. Max.
My name is Dr. Max Moore. I am currently the Ambassador and President Emeritus of the Alcor Foundation. I was previously president for about 9.5 years or so. So it's a very long-term employment for me, and also as a member, I've been a member for 3.5 decades or so. We've been here since, 1992, 1994.
Right.
I moved from California. We were in Riverside last time.
Yeah, why did you move?
Well, a couple of reasons. One is geological. The LA area is not great for long-term storage of patients with earthquakes and so on.
True.
And actually also being by the ocean, the tsunamis these days, it could happen one day. Here it's actually very stable in Arizona. We don't have any typhoons or tornadoes or earthquakes, really.
Because
so
I guess your
stable.
patients are here for
for
the
a
long
very
haul,
long time.
potentially.
Yeah. The other reason actually is political and regulatory. California is a kind of a nightmare for regulations. Back in when we were there in the 80s, we had a lot of conflicts with the coroner Riverside and the health department. Yeah, Cryonics, there aren't very many organizations. We're the only one in Arizona. There's only really 3, I would say, in the United States. There's Cryonics Institute in Michigan that's been around also since the 70s, not quite as long as us. There's a new one forming in Europe, in Switzerland, Germany. It's quite promising. There's one in Russia that's not doing very well, and there's one in Australia, and and one in China as well, actually. It's a fairly recent one. So it's really just single numbers. Well, Benjamin Franklin, really brilliant guy, was thinking about the future of America. How will this country work out? And he lamented that, I wish there was a way of preserving me with my best friends so I could come back in the future and see how America worked out. And he kind of speculated about being pickled in a vat of Madeira, which is kind of clever because it's kind of a chemical preservation, but he knew it wouldn't really work. But he had the right idea.
In order to preserve your body properly at the moment of legal death, Alcor's company must move you immediately into an ice bath in order to maintain your body and its organs indefinitely.
And it's very important initially to reduce the body temperature, because at body temperature, things are going to fall apart very quickly, and the colder we can get you as quickly as possible, the less damage will be done.
But it's dangerous, is it, to snap freeze? You have to
you don't want to freeze. No, we
it.
don't want to freeze at all at this point. We want to stay above freezing.
Yep.
Because we haven't treated the cells yet to protect them. So we want to drop very rapidly, but not below freezing.
And I know that this is used to do chest compressions and things like that.
Yeah.
So are you trying in any way to keep the blood pumping around the body at this stage?
Yeah, what we're doing is we use this mechanical CPR device. If you try and do it manually, you get tired very quickly, and it's not very efficient. And the respirator, which I guess is disconnected right now. So it might seem odd that the patient's been declared legally dead, but we're restarting circulation and respiration. So what's up with that, you might say? Well, the thing is, we have to get various medications into the patient, and if you just inject it with no blood flow, it's not going to go anywhere.
Okay.
You're also not going to cool the patient properly, so we have to have circulation to get that in there.
Question for you. Have you ever been paranoid that maybe the resuscitation would work?
Well, that's a good question. No, because the very first thing we give prevents that from happening.
Okay.
So we give a good dose of propofol, So basically, we want to make sure not just they don't wake up, but there's no level of consciousness restored, because it wouldn't be very comfortable.
No.
So that's the first thing we do. But we give membrane stabilizers, antacids, all kinds of things that basically protect the cells. And again, medical people get this because it's just like donating organs. You're basically donating all your organs to yourself, in a sense. There's all kinds of death. There's clinical death, where your heart stops and you stop breathing. That's not what we consider death today, because today, since the 60s, we can revive people, resuscitate them. So we now have legal death, we have brain death, there's different kinds. But to me, if by death we want to mean something that's irreversible, that really, you don't meet that condition until the structure of your brain that encodes your personality and memories, until that decays beyond the point that any conceivable technology could repair it. Until that point, you're potentially recoverable. If we stop that decay and degeneration, then you're not really dead. You're kind of an in-between state. So I think true death is really when your brain structure has gone beyond that point. So if I was incinerated, for instance, and I'm ash, then there's no way I'm going to come back in any way. So at that point, because I don't believe in a soul or any kind of afterlife, I think that will be the end of me. I am quite afraid of dying, because dying can be very unpleasant, but I'm not afraid of death itself, because it's literally nothing. There's literally nothing to be afraid of. I'm not going to be there going, wow, this is really boring. I'm just not going to be there, so I'm not really worried about being dead. This is the old viewing area to the patient care bay. It has bulletproof glass, basically, so people can come take a look at what we do without being able to access the patients. The basic goal is that we want people to be able to choose how long they live. And if you get tired of it after 500 years or 1,000 years, you can always check out if you want.
Yeah.
But that's your choice, rather than just an accident of nature, heart valve failing or your brain blowing out by accident. Why should you go at that point?
Life on your own terms.
Yeah.
And death on your own terms.
Yeah. So you can touch this. It's chilly, but it's just chilly. That's fine. Inside, it's minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's very, very cold. It's not like your icebox at home, which is about minus 20. This is incredibly cold. It's so cold that there's nothing happening. There's no biochemical activity whatsoever. So in here we have 4 whole body patients arranged around the...
So 1, 2, 3,
right.
4. So why are they so tall then?
Basically for economy reasons. You can see actually the older ones down here are actually shorter.
A little bit shorter,
and we realized that by stretching them, they're more economical. So they actually have like a 2 feet thick cap on top, like polystyrene cork. So it's not sealed, unlike the old one. You have to let the liquid nitrogen expand, because it'll expand several hundred times, and if you don't let it out, it'll blow everything up eventually.
Right.
So either you have a pressure relief valve, or you let it boil off. Yeah, so once we finish the surgery and everything, the cool down, the patient's put in a sleeping bag to protect them in case we have to move them. It gives them thermal inertia. And then they're put inside this aluminum pod basically for mechanical protection. So any movement, they'll be protected. And it also helps us to lift it up. We open up the roof hatch, we just lift it up and then move it down into our storage dewars.
I mean, we all knew that they were freezing bodies, right? But things are about to get a little bit weirder, because it turns out they freeze brains as well.
If this was used for neuro patients, this actually will be divided up. They'll be divided that way, then there'll be 5 shelves. So in the same space as 1 whole body patient, we can actually store 10 neuro patients. Yeah, so basically you're a neuro patient, you'll be placed inside here. So 10 neuro patients can fit in that same space. So yeah, when we have to fill one of these, we have a roof hatch, we have a winch, and you can see I have a big crane here.
Yep.
So when the patient's in the pod, we connect that up, we lift it up, just move it over and straight down. So it's really a very quick process. And then this big polystyrene cork sits on top, allowing the vapor to boil off as necessary to keep the pressure down.
That's it.
That's it.
Simple as that.
And
So how long does that whole process take? 20 minutes?
It's less than that. No, it's pretty quick. Once we have we set it up very carefully beforehand, so we can do it in just a minute or so.
Yeah.
So it's really very fast. It's just winch it up, move it over, put it down. Yeah. Why are you not doing this? Why would you not take a measure to extend your life if you think it has a chance of working? Really, my point is that if you want to wake up tomorrow and the day after, why would you not put plans in place to keep waking up and being alive, as long as life is good? To me, it's just an extension of any medical technology. Just as you get resuscitated if your heart stops, you would get heart surgery if you had a bad heart, you would get cancer treatment if you've had cancer. You do this as a last resort, essentially, to keep your life going. So anybody who enjoys their life would want to do this. But I think cryonics people are a little bit different in that they have kind of a combination of a theoretical understanding of why it's possible, why this can work, combined with a real sense of adventure. Because if you think about it, it is like the biggest adventure you can imagine. We're talking about a leap into the future, maybe 100 years into the future, when things could be radically different. And many people find that actually quite terrifying, whereas we tend to find it exhilarating. Yes, it's going to be challenging. You have to learn new skills. It's actually part of Alcor's mission to help people be reintegrated, just like someone waking up from a coma for 20 years needs to be helped to get going again. But it's kind of an exciting prospect. And also we probably tend to be a little more optimistic than most people who think that the world is going to hell, and we think actually it's not overall. There's a lot of annoying things and bad things, but actually there are less bad things than there were in the past, and if we keep applying our intelligence and goodwill, hopefully we can keep going. And it's kind of partly our personal responsibility too. I want to be there to help the world continue to get better as well.
What happens to our consciousness when our body is submerged in a tank surrounded by liquid nitrogen for over 100 years?
I believe that, and this is just belief, but I believe that at some point in the development of the human embryo, either consciousness makes a decision to inhabit the human until death, or the human body and the nervous system creates a network of self-coherence such that it can localize consciousness from a field of a greater consciousness. By preserving the network, the self-coherent network of unimaginable complexity and uniqueness that is the human brain and nervous system and the supporting body, you're preserving the ability for that consciousness to be localized again. Now, will it do it on its own? Or does that consciousness need to make the decision about whether or not to jump back in?
Stick around or yeah.
Now, you could say that maybe that decision was made before the consciousness left, and so maybe it was made by the consciousness, in which case, sure, maybe it reanimates.
Which would make sense. Really, the consciousness is the one that made the decision to be vitrified.
Or maybe the decision was made by the mind, not by consciousness motivated by fear of death. In other words, it was made by the thoughts, the little self.
If, like Dr. Max, you don't believe that there's anything else after we die, then what he's saying makes sense. I mean, if you could cryogenically vitrify your body and have the chance of being thawed out again 100, 1,000 years from now, wouldn't you try? This whole experience has left me with more questions than answers. I've listened to everybody's viewpoint, and now I think it's time for me to go and find out for myself. I'm not ready to die just yet. So I'm going to go and experience the next best option. I had made a film earlier in the year with a lady named Andrea Perron. The movie The Conjuring was based on Andrea and her family, and they still had access to the farmhouse where all of the hauntings had occurred. Andrea kindly invited me to visit her at the farmhouse in Burroughsville, Rhode Island. And this is what happened.
I'm Andrea Perrin. I'm the author of the trilogy House of Darkness, House of Light, the true story behind the feature film The Conjuring.
The energy seems really positive.
It does. I know, it does. Well, you know, part of it is that they know I'm here.
Right.
And so there's just an uptick of that energy.
Like, are you feeling anything?
Oh, God, always.
Really?
Yes. In fact, I was laying in bed last night talking to them, telling them that I was coming and that we would gather with a few friends and, you know, people that know and love the farm, and that I was going to introduce you to them, which is very much a part of what needs to happen here. You were destined to tell this story. You know, some people think that it's some kind of a paranormal museum or a spot to as a destination for investigation, but it's really more than that. It's really a spiritual journey. And those who go in there with the proper intention, with the intentions that the owners have, come out with a completely different understanding of what we lived for as a family for 10 years. And it truly is an epiphany. It's spiritual ascension. It's just enlightenment and an illumination of not only life, but the afterlife. And what I came away with was knowing that there is something beyond our mortal existence. It's not a matter of detecting them, it's just a matter of feeling them and interacting with them, feeling a sense of familiarity and a familial sense, like this is my extended family. And I don't know why I feel that, and I've always felt that my whole life.
You spent 10 years here.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's a long time.
But, you know, my mom said something very poignant many years ago, and she said, you know, we can leave the farm, but the farm will never leave us.
Oh.
And she was absolutely
That's
right.
extremely ominous.
Yes, it was, because it's part of us now. It's part of our family history. It's part of our psychology. Each and every one of us reacted differently to living in this beautiful old home. Some of us had horrific experiences. Some of us had incredibly benevolent experiences, and an odd intermingling of all of them. You can literally open a door into that farmhouse, and in so doing, open a door to connection with spirit that you may never have had in your life. And once that door is opened, it never closes again. That was my bedroom window up there in the corner. Yep, and you know, for me to be able to grow up in a place like this that was literally and is still literally alive with death is a privilege, because to be able to interact with spirit, to be able to communicate with spirit is an enormous privilege.
It's a gift.
It is.
It really
it's a
is.
gift. It was a gift to our family. This was the area of the room that was most active.
Right.
If you're going to come here, I want you to experience the wonder of it all. Now, this was our formal dining room, and where you're standing right now is where I saw my first full-body apparition.
Okay.
And he was right there in front of the door. He was like right over here in this corner, and Mr. Kenyon was packing the last of his wife's china out of that corner cabinet when we walked in, the day we were moving in. I put the box down on the table. I said, "Good morning, Mr. Kenyon, how are you?" And we chatted for a moment. I picked up the box because I had been instructed to take it to my mother in the kitchen, and she had April, who was only that big, with her.
Right.
And as I turned around, here he was.
And
he was standing right
here. What did you see?
When I met him, he looked like a full flesh and blood being to me, to the extent that I said good morning to him as I walked past. My sister Nancy saw him evaporate into thin air. And that was our awakening at the farm. And it was on day one, within 10 minutes of moving into that house. And he had his arms crossed and his head cocked and a quirky grin on his face, and he was completely focused on Mr. Kenyon. And as I walked right in front of him, I said, "Good morning, sir," and he did not respond to me.
I just saw something out of the corner of my eye and it just took my breath away. Sorry.
Don't be sorry, that's why you're here.
I don't know what it was that I saw, but I saw and felt something in the corner of my eye. It was a blackish figure and it sent chills down my spine. I can feel presences in here straight away, like a whole heap.
Okay, hear the latch? I heard that latch many times in the middle of the night, many times.
So what's a boarding room?
It's where the children were born. These hospitals didn't exist.
You'd actually, okay, you're about to give birth, get into the terrifying.
With the midwife.
Why are there nails everywhere? That is the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life.
Well, because this was not a finished room per se. They never put walls in. This is just literally
this is horrible
the
in
nails
here.
from the roof. And this is where
doesn't feel nice in here at all, Andrea.
No, I know, honey. I know. I slept with this energy every night. I slept with what happened in this room. This is the room where Cindy and Christine slept. They had twin beds. And there was a little girl that used to walk through here all the time, and she was crying. And she had a book in one hand and like a handkerchief up her sleeve to wipe her nose, and she was obviously sick.
And so she wasn't, I guess she wasn't a malevolent presence per se, more just a...
She was crying for her mother and crying for her mother. And so it was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. But Cindy's bed was here, and she would lay in bed at night, and this started almost immediately when we moved in the house. And my bed was right against that wall at the time. So she could see through the window, she could see me. And we left the doors open because it was the only way to get any heat going up here. And she would lay in bed and she'd say, "I hear voices, they're all around me." She would bolt out of here and come into my room and crawl in bed with me. And the first night it happened, I said, "Well, what do you hear?" And she said, "They're all talking at once, they're all saying the same thing at once." Naturally, I asked, "What are they saying?" And then with her little lip quivering, she said, "There are 7 dead soldiers buried in the wall. There are 7 dead soldiers buried in the wall."
As in the wall?
The wall at the back of the property.
Oh.
The strangest thing, what some people consider weird, is that I describe our place in the country as a portal cleverly disguised as a farmhouse. And that's really what it is. It's a multi-dimensional journey into the netherworld, into the past and the present, and even the future. And so it's a place where time is lost and intermingles like swirling smoke. And there's nothing else like it and no place else like it. And I've already forewarned her, you will not be the same after you experience this farmhouse.
After the tour, the team and I were pretty much ready to leave that creepy house. And then the paranormal investigators arrived. You see, Andrea had decided that she wanted to give us categoric proof that there were entities inside that home. These paranormal investigators had tools and gadgets that they believe can demonstrate that presence of paranormal activity.
I'm Ken DaCosta, and I'm the founder and director of Rise Up Paranormal here in Tiverton, Rhode Island. When we first come in, we'll use different types of EMF meters, and they're not really what people think. They're not ghost detectors. What they do basically is eliminate the possibility of false positives. And what I mean by that is like the, the trusty old K2 meter everybody's familiar with. And what we'll do with EMF meters is go around the room and do what we call a sweep. And that's to determine where the man-made fields might be, whether it's a wall outlet or there's wiring in the floor. So this way, in the middle of an investigation, if something goes off, we'll have already said, well, that's probably wiring. What the REM pod does is, you're talking about detecting EMF fields. What this device does, it actually creates one. So it's almost like an early warning system. At first it takes a couple of minutes to calm down, either that or there's a spirit here with us, one or the other. But what happens is if you break the bubble that it creates, it's kind of like a motion sensor in a way. We might use this in the middle of the floor away from all the man-made stuff, or put it in a doorway, and then there's a possibility that if this goes off, then something interfered with the bubble it creates.
Right.
Are you still with us? There's no need to be afraid. Okay. Thank you for coming. I truly appreciate this. I truly do.
Show yourself. Come join us in the room, as close to us as you feel comfortable. It's all right. I'm not going to speak for everybody here. I know for me, I have no problem. Take that next big step.
I feel a presence on the hearthstone in the parlor. She's there, looking into this room. I see her looking at us from the hearthstone in the parlor.
With a sense of what?
Wonder.
Wonder, curiosity, anger.
Wonder.
Guys, over here right now. Oh my God. Oh my God. What? Guys, the thing's going crazy. Oh, Andrea.
Yes, dear.
Come over. Come and talk over here. Guys, are you catching this?
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something over here. It's like super active. Are you picking up anything, Andrea?
Yes, she came from in there to in here. Yes, she came from in there to in here. She's here. She's right here.
Have we got like one of the REM pods or like another device we can use to like...
pod in my hand.
Do you want to put it down and see if it... Maybe
She's
Andrew
right
can ask?
here.
I can do what my hand does.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. She is right there.
There you go.
Hi. I've missed you. It's incredible. I've missed you.
Toward the end, when we started getting hits on the K2 meter, or Serena did when she was just walking around the room, what was significant about that is to get a blip, like it goes from green to yellow to orange to red. And typically when you get a cell phone or something, you might get a couple of blips of green. This thing was lighting up red. That's significant because we're talking 20 milligauss or more. And basically that's like standing under a power line with it. So all in all, that episode was interesting to me because I know what we had done before. And this was something that, I'll call it anomalous, that shouldn't have been there, and all of a sudden, you know, it's like it got charged in that particular part of the room and no other. So you leave that to the witnesses to make up your own mind what that is, but somebody who's done this for a long time, that got my attention.
It's starting to really creep me out.
Can you say
Okay. I'm just gonna leave the room for a second.
Can we go on?
Wow, that's
Shall we go on?
yeah.
Okay.
Might need to. So, there's.
Too much. I don't like it. I don't know what's going on in there, but it's like really intense, and then when you're near it, it's just like you feel connected to it because you're like conduit of it. Let's get out of it.
We invited her politely with reverence and respect because this was her house first. And when you interact with spirit in such a conjugal, communicative way, that's when contact is so profound that it is literally life-altering. It is literally an expansion of your consciousness and a form of spiritual ascension. And that is the beauty and the absolute mysticism of this farm. It is out of this world.
I think this brings up how important our beliefs are. You got to be careful what you believe. And I would say that, you know, knowing everything I know about afterlife and about continuity of consciousness, of course, it's very real that some spirits could haunt a house like that, could be kind of stuck in a certain situation. But I would say never, ever forget that as a soul connected to that infinitely loving God force, there's nothing that such a haunting spirit can do to harm you. Just always remembering that trust and faith in this, the infinite healing power of that loving God force. And there's nothing to fear in a haunting situation or anything like that. In fact, you can help the ghost get to where they need to go if you understand enough about this kind of dynamic.
I'd gone to this house because I wanted to understand why these spirits were sticking around on this earthly plane. But while we felt some things and saw some things, it really didn't give me the answers I was looking for. A friend of mine had recently told me about a powerful medium they'd been spending time with. Her name's Suzanne Gra, and she claims to be able to speak to people on the other side. I was interested to meet Susan because she was a near-death experiencer herself. Dr. Eben and the other experiencers I'd spoken to before had all said that prior to their near-death experiences, they had no extrasensory powers or special abilities. And so I wondered if Susan's ability to speak to dead people had come about because of her NDE.
I was 4.5 years old and some boys locked me in an unplugged freezer in a garage. And I was at the bottom of a stairway and I went into the room of Heart's Desires. And when I came back from that experience, I could just see spirits everywhere.
So it's been such an interesting journey that we've been on. We've been to haunted houses. We went to a cryogenics clinic where we saw people that have been frozen, hoping to be brought back from the dead. So many different ways that people are interacting with death and dealing with death. But one thing that I really wanted to learn from you is, when people die, why do some of them choose to still hang around and not come back yet and be reborn?
What I found when I was there, that most of the people waited for the people they loved, that they did this journey with, to redo it again in a different way. So it'd be kind of barbaric to think that, say you lost a loved one to a tragic accident, and you get to the other side and they're not there. Right? Oh. You want their whole being there so that you can share the experiences you've had here and work through them. So from my experience, what I saw, what they showed me, they're waiting for everyone they knew and loved on this planet that they interacted with, had a soul connection with. As a soul group, soul family, they decide how it's going to look again, and off they go.
Because, you know, I guess when we come back, we don't really know each other, and we almost have to like find each other again.
And it's planned.
But in death, there's still that connection to the people that we loved. Is that sort of what you're...
Yes. Absolutely. I wouldn't be doing mediumship if there wasn't a connection. So it's very deep, it's very real. And they're still part of our lives. They will always be part of all of our journeys, if they choose to be. If they don't choose to be, usually there'll be a guide for us.
Right.
So guides live on this planet before they become guides. Angels have never, ever touched foot on this planet.
On Earth, right.
Everything I do has integrity because it's that important to me. If you make things up, you disconnect. If you twist and tweak information, you disconnect. And we have a very, very high responsibility to do the right thing.
Right.
And if we're not doing the right thing, then we're harming. And so that's unacceptable.
It is so refreshing to talk to somebody like you and to hear those words coming out of your mouth. Like, I think people with your ethos are what are missing from your industry.
I think it's what's caused the damage. And so when you hear
that's what causes the lack of belief as well.
Yes.
You know?
But you hear lots and lots of stories of kind of the veil being thinned by an NDE so that people come back and they see spirit everywhere. I mean, I wish I did. I see spirit deep in meditation very often, encounter spirits and interact with them a lot, but not when I'm sitting here, you know, in the material world am I gifted with that. But some people are. And these are people that I believe very deeply because I know some of these people well. So it does tend to thin the veil, and I think that's part of the bigger package.
I am so excited to sit down with you and have a reading. I know that someone's coming through for me with you, so that's really great. But maybe you could just set the scene for everybody and let everybody know how you like to control the room and make everything work.
All right. So I ask a few things. One is I'm an evidential medium, which is a very different type of medium. I want evidence from them so that you recognize them. So I ask that you not add to it. You can tell me, yes, you understand, it makes sense to you. You can nod your head. That always helps to guide me where I know I'm going the right direction. When you have this many people in the room, there are all different spirits around. So I want to make sure that spirit's for you. And how I do that is by giving evidence.
Okay.
Don't say no to anything, please. Just say not yet if you don't understand something. I'm a hypnotherapist. Your unconsciousness will not take in the information and keep it. We want to keep it in your conscious mind. So when you say no, that means you're not going to keep
shutting it down.
You're shutting it out.
Right.
And I don't want you to do that. I want you to take it home and ask questions, because a lot of things you don't know they do, your family.
And that's your evidence, is it? That those little idiosyncrasies a person had that someone else wouldn't know. Okay, well, let's see if you can pick up any energies in the room.
Well, I pick up a lot of energies in the room. I'm going to move towards your cameraman again. I really feel compelled to keep talking to you about your friend, cousin, brother. He's pretty cool. He was fun when he was young. He was active. He was outgoing. Everybody loved him. He had a great personality. Does that make sense to you? And it just feels like he wants to, I see him playing music, not just listening to music. So I do want to say that it seems to be he wanted to play it or be around it all the time. So he either played instruments or was with people who played instruments on a continuous basis, because I'm not just saying listening to music. That makes sense to you? Yes. Okay. He's telling me you were his brother. He loves you with all his heart. He wants you to know that this was an accident. So he's showing me that he had an up and down mood. So yes, he may have said, I should just die, everybody would be happy, but this was not that particular time. He wants to make that very clear to you. He doesn't want you to ever think he'd leave without talking to you properly.
As soon as Susan walked into the room, I immediately felt her gravitating towards me. I even told the assistant that I feel like she's going to read me or just something along those lines. And I was kind of nervous. And when she started talking about my cousin, I was at a loss for words. She said things that no one else would know but me and him. And it made me feel quite good inside. I've had so many questions that are unanswered, and you know, now that she said what she did, I feel a lot better.
I feel like they're both around. Your mother's with your father, you understand that information, and your father wants you to know how much he loves you and he's sorry for everything. He's been sorry since he's left. And he wishes he would have said more to you when you went to see him. He wishes he would have been able to say more, is what he's saying right now. I wish I would have been able to say more. So I don't know what was wrong that he couldn't. Just a little, not too much. Okay, thank you. He's telling me that he was speaking in his mind. He was trying to give you information, that he was weak at that point. Yeah. I see him crossing over and trying to give you messages and then coming back into his body. So I want you to know that he was trying to make amends to you. He's telling me to tell you that he knows your soul. Your mother was your best friend, much more so than her. But this was the love of your mother's life. Yeah. Your mother couldn't get enough of him. No. And so to have to leave him was a protection, but it's not your fault. Yeah. It's his. Her protecting you was about him, not you. And I want you to always remember that. Your father wants you to know that he's trying very hard to clean up whatever he caused, the pain that he caused you. He wants to clean it up. And he wants you to know that you're very important to him.
The one part that with Susan that really got me is when she started talking about my dad, because it was just like a relationship that was never good. And when she went there, she opened up a whole, a chapter that I'd always just try to forget, and just everything came back to the surface. And I think in ways it was healing for me, because it was something I've held on to for quite some time in my life. And I struggled as a man, and just because of how I was treated. And so when she told me the things that she told me, it really it healed me, and it made me feel better about myself as a man and doing what I'm doing in my life, that I am worth it. And I'm just I'm not what he said I was. So I'm sorry. I'm an emotional bear.
Who's Jen? Who's Jen? Who's Jennifer?
I have an auntie who just passed.
So,
my godmother, actually.
She's telling me she also is not well. She keeps telling me her name is Jen. I think her name's Jen. Does that make sense? Okay. She wants me to tell you how much she loves you and that she's around you all the time because you're a Spitfire like her. This is another Spitfire. She loves everything. She can get into anything, but she's telling me she didn't feel well, so I'm not feeling well is what she's saying, and she wants to put me in the middle of her body, so I'm feeling very uncomfortable in the middle of my body.
Yep.
And she's telling me to tell you that she's okay, and tell my children that I'm okay. Now, I need to know who Rob is because that's connected to her. Her son. She wants her son to know that she's okay and that she loves him. She babied him. She wants him to know that she loved him and that she's okay on the other side. She's actually more than okay. She's really happy. This is a woman that also loved music and having fun. She loved family gatherings. I see her like, let's get together, let's do it. She loved to be around people. You understand this about her?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And also holidays were very special to her, and I can feel that energy. Like, I want the holiday to be here so that I can be with everyone. If I can get there, I'm gonna be there. She reminds me of someone who would maybe come with a gift every time she came in the room. She wanted to give
I can't believe you've got her. Like, how the hell do you do what you do?
They do it. I'm just giving the information.
When Susan looked at me and said, "Who's Rob?" my heart just sank because I have a cousin called Robert and his mother passed away literally 2 weeks ago. His mother was my godmother. And when she said Jen, that's when I just knew that this woman was legit because Jen was the name of my aunt. And there is absolutely no way in hell Susan would have known that I have an aunt called Jen and her son is called Rob and that she just passed. Because if you do believe that this woman is able to communicate with people that you love that have passed, it means that they're there with you in the room right now. And it also means that they loved you and cared about you enough for them to be around you, not around someone else. My aunt was around me. And I tend to think that if spirits are out there and they're watching us, that maybe she knew that I was making this documentary and she knew that I'd have a camera on me today and she knew that I'd be able to record her message. So certainly feeling very magical, mystical vibes after having that reading. It's definitely made me a believer. But I think really what you're delivering is hope. It's the understanding that when you die, you do go someplace and it's good, and that you will be connected with your loved ones. It gives you hope, you know, and that's just the greatest gift anyone could give anybody.
Well, you know, we're having this conversation and we're talking about other dimensions and this kind of like spiritual mechanics of these things, and we really don't know.
We have no idea.
We have no idea, and it's fun to speculate. But I think there's something really important and a little divine about that, which is to say that we are trying to imagine what's bigger than us. We're really trying to stretch our minds to go there. How does it work, right? How can all these things be possible? What's really on the other side? And what that is, I think, is this impulse to grow and expand, right? And it's not just inside of ourselves, but it's probably a feature of the universe itself.
Yeah.
Because that compels us towards unity, and it compels us towards an understanding that goes beyond the more narrow domain of the sense of self, right? And that, I think, is maybe an evolutionary impulse that's intrinsic to all that is.
To all life.
And we're experiencing it when we have these conversations, as abstract as they might be. That's really that teleology, it's called, is really what's pulling us towards it.
Life is so much like that, like the duality of everything, and one thing doesn't exist without the other. And I feel like when you fully have this relationship with death and you carry it like it can happen at any time, and you carry it with that wholeness and respect and understanding, then you start to see different places in your life where, like, I can live here more because, like, I do know my time's limited and I respect that. And because I respect that and know that, then I'm just
really
gonna
honor
live right
this.
now. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be with this. And it really reminds us to live, and it adds so much depth to whatever this is. Whatever this is, I don't know what all this is, but we're here and we're going through it. And I know that there's an opportunity behind death.
There are two things we can take away from our journey. One, when our body dies, our soul moves through a process that can only be described as euphoria. And two, we only get one chance to live this manifestation of our life, so we need to live it to the absolute fullest. So when a loved one dies, instead of feeling grief and sadness, we should celebrate the life they had, knowing that death really isn't the end. It's only the beginning.
Our perception of death is wrong. Everything is energy. Everything is consciousness. And when we abandon the vessel that we have come in, we transform and we live on.